yourself like staring into your pantry, wondering how all that stuff magically appeared.
It is kind of wild when you think about it, right?
Right. We're diving deep into that world today, the consumer packaged goods world.
CPG world, yeah, definitely a world of its own.
We've got a whole stack of reports, articles, the works, all about how to make it in CPG. It's a crash course in, well, everything from factories to like what makes shoppers tick, what makes us buy that extra bag of chips.
It's a fascinating mix of, well, you need to nail the logistics, the supply chains that get products on shelves.
Right, because what good is a bag of chips if it never makes it to the store?
Exactly. But then you also have to really understand the psychology of the consumer, What are people looking for? How do you grab their attention? Because a great product won't sell itself, unfortunately.
And speaking of grabbing attention, one thing that always gets me in the grocery store is how many versions of the same product there are. Like ketchup. I swear there's a different ketchup bottle for every personality type these days.
It's true, and there's a method to the madness, believe it or not. One of the sources dives into something called SKU optimization. Basically, it's all about companies figuring out how much variety is enough to be tempting, but not so much that it's a logistical nightmare.
SKU optimization, huh? That sounds pretty intense for a bottle of ketchup.
It can be. They actually use something called ABC analysis to figure out which products get the prime real estate on the shelves. It's all about weighing factors like profitability, how well a product sells compared to others, and even brand identity. So which products really scream, "This is us."
So it's not just about what's selling well, but also which products are the real money makers, and I guess which ones really match the brand's image.
You got it. It's like you might have your classic ketchup that flies off the shelves, your bread and butter, so to speak.
Right, the old reliable.
But then you might have like a niche organic option. Maybe it doesn't sell as much, but it attracts a certain type of customer, one who really values organic products.
So it's about appealing to a broader range of shoppers.
Exactly. And it all plays into this idea of brand image, showing that they cater to different needs and preferences.
Okay, so that makes sense. But how do these products even get to us? I mean, from the factory to the store shelf, it seems like a pretty complicated journey.
You're telling me? One of the sources talks about just-in-time inventory. It's a pretty wild concept when you think about it. Basically, it means the ingredients and materials arrive at the factory just as they're needed for production.
Wait, so they're not just stockpiling tons of stuff in a warehouse somewhere?
Nope, or at least they try not to. The goal is to minimize storage costs and reduce waste. It's all about efficiency, but it requires a ton of coordination and trust with suppliers.
I bet. One little hiccup and the whole system could fall apart, right?
Totally. Remember that whole Suez Canal blockage a while back? That threw a wrench into a lot of companies' just-in-time plans. It showed just how vulnerable global supply chains can be to even the smallest disruptions.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's right. Everything was backed up for weeks.
Yeah.
It definitely highlighted how interconnected the whole world is, especially when it comes to these everyday products.
Absolutely. And speaking of connections, we can't forget about the marketing side of things. These companies are always looking for new ways to reach us, to get us excited about their products.
And it seems like they're everywhere these days. Online, on social media, even those targeted ads that seem to follow you around the internet.
It's called omni-channel marketing, and it's all about creating a seamless experience for the consumer, no matter where they encounter the brand. Whether you're browsing online, scrolling through social media, or standing in the checkout line, the goal is to make you feel like you're interacting with the same brand personality and message.
So it's about consistency across all those different channels.
Exactly. Think about those buy online, pick up in-store options. BOPIS, as some people call it.
BOPIS, right. Gotta love a good acronym.
It's all about convenience for the customer, which is great. But from the company's perspective, it's also a really clever way to get you into the store where you might be tempted to buy something extra.
Oh, 100%. I've totally fallen for that one myself. I'm already here. Might as well grab a...
Exactly. It's all part of the plan.
Well played, CPG companies. Well played. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about data, because it seems like CPG companies are obsessed with data these days. And I have to admit, as a consumer, it makes me a little nervous. Like, how much do they know about me? Are they tracking my every purchase?
It's a valid concern for sure. Data privacy is a huge topic these days.
It really is. Sometimes it feels like Big Brother is watching.
I hear you. But here's the thing about data. It's only as good as the way you use it. In the CPG world, data can be incredibly powerful. It stands for customer relationship management. It's basically a giant database where companies store information about, well, you, the customer, and your interactions with their brand.
Okay, so they're kind of like a personal shopper in a way, just
Yeah.
a digital one, but hopefully a helpful one.
That's the idea. It's not meant to be intrusive. Think of it more like they use this information to hopefully make your shopping experience smoother, maybe even more enjoyable. Like, have you ever gotten a personalized recommendation from a store, maybe for something you didn't even know you needed but ended up loving?
Oh yeah, all the time. It's weirdly accurate sometimes.
See, that's the CRM system at work. Or maybe you get a discount on a product you buy regularly. That's another way they use that data. It's all about building a relationship with the customer.
Okay, I can see how that could be beneficial. But still, I imagine all this data comes with its own set of challenges, right? What happens when these algorithms get things wrong? Or if our tastes change faster than the data can keep up?
That's the thing about data. You have to know its limits.
So it's not a magic crystal ball that predicts the future of consumer desires.
Not quite. One of the sources actually emphasized the importance of balancing data with intuition and creativity.
So you're saying there's still room for like a gut feeling in this whole data-driven world?
Absolutely. While data can tell you what's popular right now, it can't always predict what the next big thing will be. Sometimes you need that human touch, that spark of creativity to come up with something truly innovative.
So they're not just robots crunching numbers, there are actual humans with like ideas and instincts involved.
It's a partnership, you could say. The data informs the decisions, but doesn't completely dictate them.
That's good to know, because some of my favorite products, I can't imagine how they would have come about just from looking at data.
Exactly. Sometimes you got to take a risk, try something new, even if the data doesn't necessarily support it.
It's like trusting your gut, even in the face of all that data.
And that's often how the most successful CPG brands, those are the ones who really stand out. They don't just follow trends, they set them.
They're trendsetters, not just trend followers.
Well, speaking of risks, one of the sources talked about dynamic pricing, which can be a bit controversial.
Yeah, that one always makes me a little uneasy as a consumer. It's like the price is constantly changing, and I can never be sure if I'm getting a good deal or not.
I totally get it. But from the CPG perspective, dynamic pricing actually lets them adapt to, well, real-time changes in demand and market conditions. So let's say there's a sudden heat wave.
Everyone's rushing for those air conditioners and popsicles.
Exactly. And the demand for iced tea goes through the roof. So dynamic pricing allows them to adjust the price accordingly, making sure they don't run out of stock.
Okay, so it's all about supply and demand, like we learned back in Econ 101.
Exactly. But of course, they can't just jack up prices whenever they want. That would alienate customers and send them running to the competition.
Right, no one likes feeling like they're being taken advantage of.
It's about finding that sweet spot where they're being responsive to market forces while still being fair to the customer, keeping that trust and loyalty intact.
It's a delicate dance, that's for sure. Now, shifting gears a bit, one concept that really surprised me was customer lifetime value. It seems like CPG companies are thinking way beyond that single purchase, right? Like they're playing the long game.
Exactly. Customer lifetime value is all about recognizing that a loyal customer who keeps coming back year after year, that's incredibly valuable.
More valuable than someone who just buys once and disappears.
Think about it. If you buy a particular brand of coffee every week for 10 years, that's a lot of coffee.
And a whole lot of revenue for that company.
Precisely. So instead of just focusing on making that one-time sale, they're investing in building relationships with customers that will last, relationships that will keep them coming back for more.
It's like they're saying, we want you to be a customer for life.
In a way, yes. It's about building brand loyalty that lasts.
So it makes their marketing dollars work harder because they're not constantly chasing new customers. They've got their loyal base.
Exactly. It's much more cost-effective in the long run.
Makes sense. Speaking of marketing, how does this whole emphasis on sustainability and ethical sourcing fit into all of this? Is it just a trend? Or are consumers really holding these companies accountable for where their products come from and how they're made?
Oh, it's definitely more than just a trend at this point. Consumers, especially younger generations, are way more aware of, well, the impact their purchases have. They want to know the story behind the product.
So how it's made, where it's made, that whole life cycle of the product.
Exactly. They want to know where their products come from, how they're made, and what kind of impact, environmental and social, those choices have. They want to make sure it aligns with their values.
So companies can't just slap a green label on something and call it a day anymore.
Not a chance. Consumers are smarter than that. They can see right through that, what they call greenwashing.
Greenwashing, right. Where it's all talk and no action.
They're looking for transparency, authenticity, real action. They want to see real commitments to sustainability, ethical sourcing, not just a bunch of marketing jargon.
So, are CPG companies actually stepping up to the plate? Are we seeing real change happening?
They're definitely making progress. We're seeing more companies embracing things like sustainable packaging, trying to reduce their carbon footprint and really looking into where their ingredients come from, making sure they're ethically sourced.
So it sounds like this focus on sustainability, it's not just good for the planet. It's not just good for society. It's actually becoming good for business as well.
It's a win-win. Consumers are voting with their wallets, and companies are starting to pay attention. Now, all this talk about ethical sourcing and sustainability, it brings up another important aspect of CPG risk.
Because the more complex the system, the more opportunities there are for things to go wrong.
This industry, it's full of potential pitfalls. Think about supply chain disruptions, we talked about that, or maybe sudden changes in consumer preferences, those trends we were just talking about.
It's like they're walking a tightrope, always trying to stay one step ahead of the game.
Exactly. So how do they navigate all that risk and uncertainty?
So how do they navigate all that risk, all that uncertainty? It's a tightrope walk, for sure.
Tell me about it. Well, one thing companies do to try and soften the blow of those supply chain disruptions is diversify. Think back to our just-in-time inventory chat. Remember the Suez Canal?
Oh, yeah. That was a mess.
Imagine if you had all your eggs in one basket, just one supplier for some crucial ingredient, and boom, that supply chain goes belly up.
Yikes. That's not a recipe for success.
Not at all. But if you've got multiple suppliers, maybe in different parts of the world even, well, now you're talking about a much more resilient supply chain. Less vulnerable when those inevitable hiccups pop up.
Like a safety net. Or, like you said, maybe even a safety net for the safety net.
Exactly. You got to be prepared. And then there's the whole, trying to stay ahead of those shifting consumer tastes, those trends that change the wind.
It's like trying to bottle lightning sometimes.
One source called it reading the collective mind of the consumer, which, easier said than done.
I bet. So how do they even begin to do that?
Well, social media has become huge for this. Companies are practically glued to those feeds, watching for any little shift, any change in the conversation.
So what people are talking about, what's got them excited, what they're complaining about, all of it.
It's all valuable intel. They're looking for those early warning signs, those subtle hints that might not show up in traditional market research. It's about connecting the dots, sometimes before the dots are even visible to everyone else.
So if, everyone on my Instagram feed is suddenly posting about making sourdough bread, that's a sign.
Maybe. It could be. If they see a surge in conversations about, say, home baking, that might tip them off to a growing trend. And then they can, adjust their products or maybe dream up a new marketing campaign, all based on that little breadcrumb of insight.
That's wild. It's like they're trying to predict the future.
In a sense, yeah. But it's not magic. It's about being able to spot those patterns, those shifts in the cultural landscape, and then be nimble enough to adapt.
Adapt or die, right. That seems to be the name of the game these days, especially in a fast-paced world like CPG.
It's a fascinating world, that's for sure. And complex. There's so much happening behind the scenes, so many different factors at play. Data, intuition, creativity, even a little bit of luck, it all comes together.
It really does. This whole deep dive has been a real eye-opener, seeing how all these intricate pieces fit together, how those everyday products end up in our shopping carts.
Exactly. And next time you're strolling down the grocery store aisle, take a minute, just really look at all those products, all the thought, the planning, even the risks that went into putting them on those shelves. It's quite a journey.
It is. And for everyone listening, I challenge you to do the same. Next time you're reaching for that bag of chips or that bottle of shampoo, take a moment to think about the journey. That whole journey from, an idea to a product in your hand. It's about data, sure, but it's also about understanding what makes us tick, what we crave, what we need. And of course, it's about that never-ending quest for something new, something better, something innovative. That's the world of consumer packaged goods, folks, and we've just scratched the surface.